Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of At the Buzzer Sports, where we talk all things basketball all the time. I am your host, John Drummond, and today we are going to be breaking down the New York Knicks versus the Boston Celtics Eastern Conference semifinals. Now, Boston and New York will be playing their first game on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time, and there's a lot of very interesting things that I want to talk about in this series, and there's a lot of things that I feel as though can be attacked. A lot of people have been going into this series just blindly giving the Celtics the win in this series and saying they'll win in about 4 or 5 games, which I can't say they're wrong. I definitely do believe that the Boston Celtics will win this series, but I do want to talk about some avenues that the New York Knicks can go about if they want to win this series. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about some stats, we're going to look at some film, we're going to be talking about some X factors and some keys to victory. And the first team I'm going to be talking about is the New York Knicks. And a few things I do want to talk about. Some of the big X factors for the New York Knicks is going to be Karl Anthony Towns' defense, hiding Jalen Brunson on defense, and their depth of their roster. We know Boston Celtics, they make a living out of attacking mismatches, creating advantages from three, and creating easy switches on the perimeter or down low. We saw in a lot of games that Kristaps Porzingis got a lot of favorable matchups against guys like OG Anunoby, guys like Mikal Bridges or Jalen Brunson, and he was able to take advantage of those matchups consistently. And with the New York Knicks having the disadvantages they have defensively with guys like Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns against this Boston Celtics team, I don't necessarily know how much they're going to be able to hide them, but there are some things that I do want to point out that could lean in the Celtics' favor. I want to share that Jaylen Brown is shooting 32% on open threes, and he's shooting 3 of those a game. I also want to note that Jrue Holiday is shooting 29% on open threes. He's also shooting 2 of those a game. Now, the difference with Jrue Holiday and Jaylen Brown is only shooting 36% on wide open threes, and Jrue Holiday is shooting 41% on wide open threes. I think New York is probably going to have to pick their poison. I don't think you're going to want to give up a lot of open threes to Derek White or to Kristaps Porzingis or to Jason Tatum or to Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard. If there are going to be guys that you're going to choose to leave open from 3, it would have to be Jrue Holiday or Jaylen Brown. I also think that you're probably going to have to pre-switch a lot of pick and rolls, because they ran a lot of side pick and rolls on the weak side to try and get Kristaps Porzingis a switch onto Jalen Brunson on the elbow. They ran a lot of inverted pick and rolls off ball, where they had Kristaps Porzingis getting a screen from Derek White. Now you have Derek White on Karl Anthony Towns, or you have Karl Anthony Towns on Derek White, and you have Jalen Brunson on Kristaps Porzingis. And it's also going to be really interesting to see what they do with Karl Anthony Towns, because I think playing a drop is not necessarily something you want to do. You're definitely not going to want to play Karl Anthony Towns at the level. And I've definitely seen Jalen Brunson try and show and recover a lot when Jason Tatum is heading into a pull-up 3 or trying to drive to the basket. One thing I also noticed, the Boston Celtics are one of the lower tier teams in 3-point volume in the playoffs so far. And I don't necessarily know how much they're going to uptick their 3-point shooting in this series, but that's definitely something to note. They're shooting about 31 threes a game in the playoffs so far. Now, this is a 5-game sample size against a much better defense in the Orlando Magic. But if you can limit those threes as much as possible, I definitely do think you have a better shot of winning this series. Like what I mentioned earlier, you're going to have Jalen Brunson show a lot to try and negate the pick and roll aspect that they're going to do. They're going to hunt Jalen Brunson. They're going to hunt Karl Anthony Towns. And Jrue Holiday, once again, you're going to have to pick your poison. The Memphis Grizzlies did it against the Boston Celtics, and they ended up winning that game with Jalen Brunson shooting 17 threes. And once again, if we look at the numbers, him shooting 29% on open threes, that's going to be something that you may want to lean into just a little bit more. And this definitely is not me saying that Jrue Holiday is a bad shooter or somebody that can go cold from 3. But when I do look at the numbers, he is the guy that I would necessarily want to shoot those shots a little bit more than a Jason Tatum or Derek White. And as far as offensively, I think Karl Anthony Towns has to be aggressive. He has to get downhill. He has to get to the free throw line. He has to be able to make himself, or he has to be able to be an impact inside the arc. In the games against the Boston Celtics, we saw multiple possessions where they threw Jaylen Brown at him, they threw Jrue Holiday at him, they threw Jason Tatum at him, and I feel as though it wasn't until the last game that they played when Karl Anthony Towns was really putting the ball on the floor and getting to the free throw line and getting to the basket. This is Karl Anthony Towns' shot chart against the Boston Celtics in the last game they played, which was April 8th, 2025. You can definitely see that he got to the rim a lot more, shot 10 shots in the restricted area, 7 shots outside of the restricted area, 1 shot in the mid-range. This is something I would definitely want to see more from Cat as the series goes along. And these are the things that I'm really harping on with Karl Anthony Towns. They're going to have some possessions, at least early in this series, where the Celtics are okay with conceding a switch of Derek White on Karl Anthony Towns or Jaylen Brown or Sam Hauser or Jason Tatum, and he just has to be a lot more aggressive. Here he's just going to attack the mismatch. He's going to put his back to the basket. I would like to see him get a little bit better positioning to where he could get down low just a little bit more to attack a Kristaps Porzingis that's helping off a little bit more, and you can dump it off to Mitchell Robinson. Here they're playing a double big lineup. But you see he gets the ball, he's going to go right to work. One dribble, two dribble, pick up your dribble, go up. It doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't have to be anything cute. You just have to make your decision and go up, because they're going to send Peyton Pritchard. They're going to send Jaylen Brown, and it's going to have to be some plus level shooters on the perimeter, whether it's OG, Mikal, Deuce McBride, whoever. Now, the Celtics are also a really good transition defense. Here he's going to be trailing in transition because we know how good Karl Anthony Towns is as a spot up 3-point shooter, somebody who you would want to be trailing in transition. Here, Sam Hauser is just going to pick him up. Once again, I'm assuming within the first few games that the Celtics are going to be okay with leaving Sam Hauser on Karl Anthony Towns or a Jaylen Brown or a Jason Tatum, like I've said earlier. But if Karl Anthony Towns can continue to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim, here they may call a foul. They may not. Actually, rewatching it back, it does not look like he was fouled here, but this could be a foul call, or it could just go down, or he could get better positioning. I do feel as though Karl Anthony Towns is going to be at his best in this series when they're testing him with a Sam Hauser or a Jaylen Brown guarding him. And I'm much more on the side of the Knicks are going to have to get everything out of their guys offensively to keep up with the Boston Celtics more than getting stops consistently. I just think with those 2 weak points you have defensively with Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, the Celtics are going to be able to dominate those switches and those mismatches as much as they possibly can. The Celtics are the best mismatching attacking team in the NBA, and I just don't know how much you're going to be able to stop that in the half court. So it's going to be extremely important for Karl Anthony Towns to be aggressive in the half court, aggressive in transition. It's going to be extremely important for Jalen Brunson to be getting to the free throw line, making his mid-range shots, making a lot of threes. Same with Mikal Bridges. I think Mikal Bridges is one of the better off-ball wings in the NBA as a cutter, as an off-ball shooter, as a catch and shooter. He's going to have to be lighting it up, and I think OG Anunoby is going to have to be really good offensively as well, because you do have a lot of really good defenders around Brunson and Cat with OG and Mikal at times and Josh Hart and Deuce McBride, but they are also going to be covering up a lot of the deficiencies that Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson have. Now, as for the Boston Celtics, I'm going to keep this one I'm not going to keep it kind of short, because I feel like we all know what the Boston Celtics bring to this series. They're the best three-point shooting team in the league if you really put together the volume and the three-point percentage. And I think Jason Tatum has been phenomenal over these past few games as a scorer in isolation, getting downhill, getting to the rim and playmaking, to the point where I don't necessarily know how much they're going to be able to hide Brunson, like I said earlier. Same with Karl Anthony Towns. And I'm also very, very intrigued to see how Jason Tatum's pull-up shooting is going to be, because I think it's going to be there. And I looked at all of the three-point attempts that the Boston Celtics got in these games against the New York Knicks, and there was just a lot of really open threes, to the point where Boston is going to have every single opportunity to have one of these three-point shooting flurries in this series, to where it's going to be really hard to combat that. Now, this was the play I was talking about earlier in the episode. I want you guys to take a look at Jrue Holiday right here and Kristaps Porzingis in the corner. They're going to run a lot of inverted screens here, to where Kristaps Porzingis is going to be able to curl and get the switch on Jalen Brunson. And this is where I feel like you kind of just have to fight through this screen and live with Jrue Holiday making the open threes. Like, if you're going to look here, Jrue Holiday is going to set this screen. Karl Anthony Towns is going to fight here, and he's just going to stay with Jrue Holiday. I think this switch right here, even though Kristaps Porzingis has not been the greatest in the playoffs so far, this switch right here is more important than a Jrue Holiday three, or this switch right here is more dangerous than a Jrue Holiday three-point shot. So I feel as though you kind of just have to let Jaylen Brown recover on Jrue Holiday in open in the corner, and you have to be fast. You have to be on time, because now this is what's going to happen. Mikal Bridges is extremely worried about Kristaps. So is Karl Anthony Towns. You're going to swing it, and this is the worst thing that can happen against the Boston Celtics. You're going to get in rotation, and things like this happen, to where now you're banking on Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson to move fast on their feet in transition. Karl Anthony Towns does not close out correctly. Drew Holiday has the ability to drive past him. Now Josh Hart has to rotate and cover the rim. Now what does Drew Holiday do? He swings it to an open Derek White. Now Derek White's open. Now the elite shooter is open. It's mistakes that happen way earlier in the play. Like this is the mistake, and this is the outcome. An elite shooter wide open from three. So let's say the mistake happens 23, or not even 23, 19 to 18 seconds into the shot clock. You're going to be paying for that mistake with 8 seconds left in the shot clock. That's just something that happens with the Boston Celtics. It's also going to be very intriguing to see what the Knicks are going to do against Jason Tatum's pull-up three-point shooting, because all it takes is one game for Jason Tatum to hit 7 3-point shots and he has 44 points. And it's this simple. You have to either play at the level, or you're going to have to show, or you're going to have to send two to the ball. And that's just not something you want to do. That's not something you want to do, because the Knicks just don't have the rotation speed, in my opinion. So even though Mitchell Robinson is playing up more than he would like to, it's still not up high enough, and Jason Tatum steps into a really deep three. And he's going to be comfortable taking those, and he's going to take them all series. And that's just where I feel the Celtics have the advantage in this series. The Celtics are going to be able to get whatever they want consistently. And this is how they are going to run their offense. This is how they've been running their offense for the past 2 seasons. The Boston Celtics are going to get open threes consistently. They're going to have guys that can play make. They're going to be able to make advantages out of disadvantages for the defense. They're going to be able to do that so consistently and so routinely that I just don't know if the Knicks can match that offensively, and they don't have the defenders to stop that. They have the 2 weak points in this series defensively, and they're going to get attacked relentlessly. And just off of those 2 very minor mistakes alone, the Celtics were able to get open threes, and that's what they do best. So if I were to have to pick this series, I really would go the Boston Celtics in 5 games. So ladies and gentlemen, if you guys like this type of content, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you guys follow me on Instagram at @TheBuzzerSports, and follow me on TikTok at @TheBuzzerSports. Make sure you guys join my playback room, as we are going to be watching a lot of historic games this offseason at @TheBuzzerSports and The Buzzer Room. Got a lot of content coming you guys' way. Very excited to show you guys the improvements that we are going to be taking towards this channel. And once again, if you guys like this type of content, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on your post notification bells on the way out. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.